The Septuagint, Genesis chapter 18. And God appeared to him by the oak of Mamre, as he sat by the door of his tent at noon. And he lifted up his eyes and beheld, and lo, 3 men stood before him. And having seen them, he ran to meet them from the door of his tent, and did obeisance to the ground. And he said, Lord, if indeed I have found grace in thy sight, pass not by thy servant. Let water now be brought, and let them wash your feet, and do ye refresh yourselves under the tree. And I will bring bread, and ye shall eat, and after this ye shall depart on your journey, on account of which refreshment ye have turned aside to your servant. And he said, So do, as thou hast said. And Abraham hasted to the tent to Sarah, and said to her, Hasten, and knead 3 measures of fine flour, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the kine, and took a young calf, tender and good, and gave it to his servant, and he hasted to dress it. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set them before them, and they did eat, and he stood by them under the tree. And he said to him, Where is Sarah, thy wife? And he answered and said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will return and come to thee according to this period seasonably. And Sarah, thy wife, shall have a son. And Sarah heard at the door of the tent, being behind him, and Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in days, and the custom of women ceased in Sarah. And Sarah laughed in herself, saying, The thing has not yet happened to me, even until now, and my Lord is old. And the Lord said to Abraham, Why is it that Sarah is laughed in herself, saying, Shall I then indeed bear? But I am grown old. Shall anything be impossible with the Lord? At this time I will return to thee seasonably, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said to her, Nay, but thou didst laugh. And the men, having risen up from thence, looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham went with them, attending them on their journey. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham my servant what things I intend to do? But Abraham shall become a great and populous nation, and in him shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. For I know that he will order his sons and his house after him, and they will keep the ways of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, and that the Lord may bring upon Abraham all things whatsoever he has spoken to him. And the Lord said, The cry of Sodom and Gomorrah has been increased towards me, and their sins are very great, and I will therefore go down and see if they completely correspond with the cry which comes to me, and if not, that I may know. And the men, having departed thence, came to Sodom, and Abraham was still standing before the Lord. And Abraham drew nigh and said, Wouldest thou destroy the righteous with the wicked? And shall the righteous be as the wicked? Should there be 50 righteous in the city, wilt thou destroy them? Wilt thou not spare the whole place for the sake of the 50 righteous, if they be in it? By no means shalt thou do as this thing is so as to destroy the righteous with the wicked. So the righteous shall be as the wicked. By no means. Thou that judgest the whole earth, shalt thou not do right? And the Lord said, If there should be in Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole city, and the whole place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Now I have begun to speak to my Lord, and I am earth and ashes. But if the 50 righteous should be diminished to 45, wilt thou destroy the whole city because of the 5 wanting? And he said, I will not destroy it, if I should find there 45. And he continued to speak to him still, and said, But if there should be found there 40? And he said, I will not destroy it for the 40's sake. And he said, Will there be anything against me, Lord, if I shall speak? But if there be found 30? And he said, I will not destroy it for the 30's sake. And he said, Since I am able to speak to the Lord, what if there should be found there 20. And he said, I will not destroy it, if I should find there 20. And he said, Will there be anything against me, Lord, if I speak yet once? But if there should be found there 10. And he said, I will not destroy it for the 10's sake. And the Lord departed, and when he left off speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. Genesis chapter 19. And the two angels came to Sodom at evening, and Lot sat by the gate of Sodom. And Lot, having seen them, rose up to meet them, and he worshipped with his face to the ground, and said, Lo, my lords, turn aside to the house of your servant, and rest from your journey, and wash your feet. And having risen early in the morning, ye shall depart on your journey. And they said, Nay, but we will lodge in the street. And he constrained them, and they turned aside to him, and they entered into his house. And he made a feast for them, and baked unleavened cakes for them. And they did eat. But before they went to sleep, the men of the city, the Sodomites, compassed the house, both young and old, all the people together. And they called out Lot, and said to him, Where are the men that went in to thee this night? Bring them out to us, that we may be with them. And Lot went out to them to the porch, and he shut the door after him. And he said to them, By no means, brethren, do not act villainously, but I have 2 daughters, who have not known a man. I will bring them out to you, and do ye use them as it may please you. Only do not injury to these men, to avoid which they came under the shelter of my roof. And they said to him, Stand back there. Thou camest in to sojourn. Was it also to judge? Now then we would harm thee more than them. And they passed hard on the man, even Lot. And they drew nigh to break the door. And the men stretched forth their hands, and drew Lot in to them into the house, and shut the door of the house. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, and they were wearied with seeking the door. And the men said to Lot, Hast thou here sons-in-law, or sons or daughters? Or if thou hast any other friend in the city, bring them out of this place. For we are going to destroy this place, for their cry has been raised up before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, Rise up and depart out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to be speaking absurdly before his sons-in-law. But when it was morning, the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise and take thy wife and thy 2 daughters whom thou hast, and go forth, lest thou also be destroyed with the iniquities of the city. And they were troubled, and the angels laid hold on his hand, and the hand of his wife, and the hands of his 2 daughters, in that the Lord spared him. And it came to pass, when they brought them out, that they said, Save thine own life by all means. Look not round to that which is behind, nor stay in all the country round about. Escape to the mountain, lest perhaps thou be overtaken together with them. And Lot said to them, I pray, Lord, since thy servant has found mercy before thee, and thou hast magnified thy righteousness in what thou doest towards me, that my soul may live. But I shall not be able to escape to the mountain, lest perhaps the calamity overtake me, and I die. Behold, this city is near for me to escape thither, which is a small one, and there I shall be preserved. Is it not little? And my soul shall live because of thee. And he said to him, Behold, I have had respect to thee also about this thing, that I should not overthrow the city about which thou hast spoken. Hasten, therefore, to escape thither, for I shall not be able to do anything until thou art come thither. Therefore he called the name of that city Segor. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Segor. And the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew these cities, and all the country round about, and all that dwelt in the cities, and the plants springing out of the ground. And his wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham rose up early to go to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and towards the surrounding country, and saw, and behold, a flame went up from the earth, as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass that when God destroyed all the cities of the region round about, God remembered Abraham, and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when the Lord overthrew those cities in which Lot dwelt. And Lot went up out of Segor, and dwelt in the mountains, and he and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Segor. And he dwelt in a cave, and he and his 2 daughters with him. And the elder said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is no one on earth who shall come in to us, as it is fit in all the earth. Come, and let us make our father drink wine, and let us sleep with him, and let us rise up seed from our father. So they made their father drink wine in that night, and the elder went in and lay with her father that night, and he knew not when he slept and when he rose up. And it came to pass on the morrow that the elder said to the younger, Behold, I slept yesternight with our father. Let us make him drink wine in this night. And do thou go in and sleep with him, and let us rise up seed for our father. So they made their father drink wine in that night also. And the younger went in and slept with her father, and he knew not when he slept, nor when he arose. And the 2 daughters of Lot conceived by their father, and the elder bore a son, and called his name Moab, saying, He is of my father. This is the father of the Moabites to this present day. And the younger also bore a son, and called his name Ammon, saying, The son of my family. This is the father of the Ammonites to this present day. Genesis chapter 20. And Abraham removed thence to the southern country, and dwelt between Cades and Sur, and sojourned to Gerar. And Abraham said concerning Sarah his wife, She is my sister, for he feared to say, She is my wife, lest at any time the men of the city should kill him for her sake. So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. And God came to Abimelech by night in sleep, and said, Behold, thou diest for the woman whom thou hast taken, whereas she has lived with a husband. But Abimelech had not touched her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou destroy an ignorantly sinning and just nation? Said he not to me, She is my sister? And said she not to me, He is my brother? With a pure heart, and in the righteousness of my hands, have I done this? And God said to him in sleep, Yea, I knew that thou didst this with a pure heart, and I spared thee, so that thou shouldest not sin against me. Therefore I suffered thee not to touch her. But now return the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. But if thou restore her not, know that thou shalt die, and all thine. And Abimelech rose early in the morning, and called all his servants, and he spoke all these words in their ears. And all the men feared exceedingly. And Abimelech called Abraham, and said to him, What is this that thou hast done to us? Have we sinned against thee, that thou hast brought upon me and upon my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done to me a deed which no one ought to do. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What hast thou seen in me that thou hast done this? And Abraham said, Why, I said, Surely there is not the worship of God in this place?
and they will slay me because of my wife. For truly she is my sister by my father, but not by my mother. And she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God brought me forth out of the house of my father, that I said to her, This righteousness thou shalt perform for me. In every place into which we may enter, say of me, He is my brother. And Abimelech took 1,000 pieces of silver, and sheep, and calves, and servants, and maidservants, and gave them to Abraham. And he returned him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said to Abraham, Behold, my land is before thee. Dwell wheresoever it may please thee. And to Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Those shall be to thee for the price of thy countenance. And to all the women with thee, and speak the truth in all things. And Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and his wife, and his women servants, and they bore children, because the Lord had fast closed from without every womb in the house of Abimelech, because of Sarah, Abraham's wife.
Genesis chapter 21. And the Lord visited Sarah, as he said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he spoke. And she conceived and bore to Abraham a son in old age, at the set time, according as the Lord spoke to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born to him, whom Sarah had bore to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised Isaac on the 8th day, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac his son was born to him. And Sarah said, The Lord has made laughter for me, for whoever shall hear shall rejoice with me. And she said, Who shall say to Abraham that Sarah suckles a child? For I have borne a child in my old age. And the child grew, and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast, the day that his son Isaac was weaned. And Sarah, having seen the son of Agar, the Egyptian, who was born to Abraham, sporting with Isaac her son, then said to Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not inherit with my son Isaac. But the word appeared very hard before Abraham concerning his son. But God said to Abraham, Let it not be hard before thee concerning the child, and concerning the bondwoman, in all things whatsoever Sarah shall say to thee, hear her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And moreover, I will make the son of this bondwoman a great nation, because he is thy seed. And Abraham rose up in the morning, and took loaves, and a skin of water, and gave them to Hagar. And he put the child on her shoulder, and sent her away, and she, having departed, wandered in the wilderness, near the well of the oath. And the water failed out of the skin, and she cast the child under a fir tree. And she departed, and sat down opposite him at a distance, as it were a bowshot. For she said, Surely I cannot see the death of my child. And she sat opposite him, and the child cried aloud and wept. And God heard the voice of the child from the place where he was, and an angel of God called Hagar out of heaven, and said to her, What is it, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the child from the place where he is. Rise up, and take the child, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of spring water. And she went and filled the skin with water, and gave the child drink. And God was with the child, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness, and his mother took him a wife out of Pharan of Egypt. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech spoke,
and Ochkozath his friend, and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, to Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all things, whatsoever thou mayest do. Now therefore swear to me by God that thou wilt not injure me, nor my seed, nor my name, but according to the righteousness which I have performed with thee thou shalt deal with me, and with the land in which thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of the wells of water, which the servants of Abimelech took away. And Abimelech said to him, I know not who has done this thing to thee, neither didst thou tell it me, neither heard I it, but only today. And Abraham took sheep and calves, and gave them to Abimelech, and both made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs by themselves, and Abimelech said to Abraham, What are these 7 ewe lambs, which thou hast set alone? And Abraham said, Thou shalt receive the 7 ewe lambs of me, that they may be for me as a witness, that I dug this well. Therefore he named the name of that place the well of the oath, for there they both swore, and they made a covenant at the well of the oath. And there rose up Abimelech, Ochkozath, his friend, and Phicol, the commander-in-chief of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a field at the well of the oath, and called there on the name of the Lord and the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines many days.
Genesis chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that God tempted Abraham, and said to Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Lo, I am here. And he said, Take thy son, the beloved one, whom thou hast loved, Isaac, and go into the high land, and offer him there for a whole burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up in the morning, and saddled his ass, and he took with him 2 servants, and Isaac his son. And having split wood for a whole burnt offering, he arose and departed, and came to the place of which God spoke to him on the 3rd day. And Abraham, having lifted up his eyes, saw the place afar off. And Abraham said to his servants, Sit ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will proceed thus far, and having worshipped, we will return to you. And Abraham took the wood of the whole burnt offering, and he laid it on Isaac his son, and he took into his hands both the fire and the knife, and the 2 went together. And Isaac said to Abraham his father, Father. And he said, What is it, son? And he said, Behold the fire and the wood. Where is the sheep for a whole burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will provide himself a sheep for a whole burnt offering, my son. And both having gone together came into the place which God spoke of to him. And there Abraham built an altar, and laid the wood on it. And having bound the feet of Isaac his son together, he laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand to take the knife to slay his son. And an angel of the Lord called him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Behold, I am here. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the child, neither do anything to him, for now I know that thou fearest God, and for my sake thou hast not spared thy beloved son. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and beheld, and lo, a ram caught by his horns, and a plant of Septuagint. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a whole burnt offering in the place of Isaac his son. And Abraham called
the name of that place the Lord hath seen, that they might say today, in the mount the Lord was seen. And an angel of the Lord called Abraham the second time out of heaven, saying, I have sworn by myself, says the Lord, because thou hast done this thing, and on my account hast not spared thy beloved son, surely blessing I will bless thee, and multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is by the shore of the sea. And thy seed shall inherit the cities of their enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast hearkened to my voice. And Abraham returned to his servants, and they arose and went together to the well of the oath. And Abraham dwelt at the well of the oath. And it came to pass after these things that it was reported to Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah herself too has borne sons to Nachor thy brother, Uz the firstborn, and Box his brother, and Kemuel the father of the Syrians, and Chazad, and Azav, and Phalades, and Jedalph, and Bethuel begot Rebekah. These are 8 sons which Milcah bore to Nachor, the brother of Abraham, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah. She also bore to Bek, and Taim, and Tochos, and Mocha.